The summer travel season is here in the U.S. It kicks off this weekend, the long weekend, with millions of Americans expected to get in their cars and planes and boats or whatever else they get in. They're going to be out and about. Research firm S&P Global, together with AAA, forecasts that more than 37 million people in total will hit the road for road trips. That's an increase of 6% from last year. And you ask, well, about gas prices? Well, on average, they're 10% lower than a year ago at $3.65 a gallon. But inflation means overall travel expenses are expected to go up 6% compared to a year ago. 3.4 million travelers are expected to get on those planes this holiday, and that is a rise of 11% from last year. To talk more about travel, the cost of gas, and everything else, Carl Larry, Sales Director at Wood Mackenzie Genscape. Good to see you. Hey, I think last year, if we were to have this discussion, we were talking about the shortage of flight attendants and pilots and gas prices being up and how sad everybody was, but then how happy they all were to be out and about traveling post-COVID. Fast forward to where we are today. Are we happier than we were last year? There are more flights, gas prices are down, and people seem to be, I guess, in a relatively good mood as we enter summer chaos.
Yeah, I think it is. I think the difference is that just like last year, you have this pent-up demand for people wanting to get out and travel and go abroad or even domestic. But also even now with higher gasoline prices, we're still in that environment now where it's not every day I'm driving to work. It's 3-4 days a week. So even my gas prices, even though they're higher or high, they're not affecting me as much as when I was going 5 days a week.
Interesting. And in terms of travel, I know a lot of people took a lot of trips last year. I suppose that's going to continue this year. Are there any particular destinations, whether it's the East Coast or the West Coast or maybe internationally, that people are trying to get to?
Phil, it's funny. I've been talking to so many people talking about traveling internationally. The strong dollars helped, but also, I think that they understand that airline fares, hotel fares are, a sunk cost. They were already into those, so I don't think it's a big deal. But they know this opportunity to travel abroad now is better than it has been.
One thing I noticed, and I've been snooping around at these hotel prices around the country, they're not just a little higher. They're a lot higher than they were last year. Flights, arguable, but the hotels, some of the ones I'm looking at are double or triple from what they were last year. And I understand these hotel companies, that they want to make money back they lost. But sometimes I feel like they're overdoing it, right? Yes, there's a point to making money, but they're charging $500, $600, $700, $800 a night. When last year at this time, it would be a few $100s.
Well, it's economics. What is something worth is what people will pay for it. So right now, that demand is that strong. They can charge those higher prices, and people are willing to pay for them because they want to go out, they want to travel, they want to really just kind of get back the time that they've missed, in the past few years. But definitely, accepting of it.
We say that inflation has hurt people's wallets and people are cutting back on things. In fact, vacations is one of the things that people say they cut back on when we talk about inflation. But somebody's lying because the numbers don't indicate that at all. People are traveling despite the inflation and they're paying for it somehow. Either they're using their bank account or they're charging it on their Amex. But what explains this difference, because they both can't be right?
So I think it could be the frequency. People might take 3-4 trips a year, but now this year everybody's banking on one big trip. I mentioned earlier, I see a lot of people going abroad, but this is their big trip of the year. So here's my 14 days I'm going on vacation, and this is what I'm doing for the year. I'm not going to do it every time. Prior to this, I think people would say, oh, I'll take a trip here, trip here, trip here, but they can't afford that now. So it's all on one big trip. So
one of our producers is planning a trip to Europe this summer. And we were talking about this earlier, that it was expensive. I think it was something like $2,000 round trip. That is significantly more than what it was last year as well. What kind of tips do you have that can help people save money who are trying to go somewhere this summer? Because I think for a lot of families that might actually be a deal breaker, because if you've got a family of 4 or 5 or 6 or however many, you multiply that by the amount things have gone up, it might just be too much.
I think people really have to focus on, what the experience really is. When we mentioned about going abroad to Europe, to Asia, it's a once in a lifetime trip. If that's what you want to do with your family, then do that. If it's Disneyland or somewhere to the West Coast or East Coast, then that's your trip. But you want to focus on the experience, not so much about the cost.